Jeff Slauson here from 19 News Now at the 19 News Digital Desk. In November, when you head to the polls, there will be a provision there. You can vote yes or no on legalizing marijuana here in the state of Ohio. Now, a few weeks ago, we spoke with the Coalition to Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol, who very clearly supports it. They're the ones that put it onto the ballot. And we've been trying for a few weeks to get the opposition here, those that are against it. And we finally did today. The Ohio Fraternal Order of Police is very much so against the legalization of marijuana in the state of Ohio. They break down exactly why that is in the interview I'll play for you now. Just to start off here, Gary, if you don't mind, explain the position of the FOP on the now on the ballot and being voted on potential for full legalization of marijuana here in the state.
Well, in a short sentence, we're opposed to it.
If you can, explain why.
Yeah, there's just a lot of problems with it. I mean, typically everybody always relates back to Colorado and Washington State, who were kind of the first two to do it. And, Colorado's seen 138% increase in traffic fatalities when marijuana was involved. That's an astounding number. The number of ER visits has gone up, especially for small kids. And when you start talking about, legalizing edibles and things like that, and we've all seen the packaging, a lot of the edible candy bars and candies look just like, the gummies that kids eat today and Reese's cups and those such things. So, when the parents are irresponsible, which we know most are, that are using drugs, when they leave this stuff out, toddlers are going to get into it. They're going to overdose out. They're going to wind up in the hospital. Again, marijuana has been shown. The National Institute of Health, the World Health Organization, our own Cleveland Clinic has said that it's a gateway drug for other things. We know what the opioid problem is in Ohio. You folks do stories too frequently on the number of opioid deaths that we have in Ohio. And statistically, I think there's even numbers out there that show that a lot of suicide victims, a very good percentage of them have marijuana in their system. That's just on a societal level. If you look at a crime level, I think Colorado has seen a 8 or 9% increase in property crimes and about a 19% in violent crimes. And I'm sure that those are folks that are trying to get money to buy even legal marijuana.
We've seen progressively over the past couple of years a decrease for a lot of departments here in Cleveland, no stranger to that, losing officers, having a decline in the amount of officers and amount of first responders that are applying here. With something like this potentially becoming legalized, how does that play into the fact that there is some lower staffing for a lot of the problems that you were just laying out?
Well, I think that, and some folks would like you to believe that we'll call it the black market for marijuana is going to go away because it's going to be legal and you can buy it in local dispensaries. Those folks aren't going to go away. Sadly, that's their livelihood. So I think you're going to see an increase in that, which has been the case in Oregon. I think they found that 70% of the marijuana sales in Oregon were black market. These folks aren't going to go away. They're going to charge lower prices than what the dispensaries are charging. And I think it's going to create a bigger problem because obviously crime's going to go up. Statistically, that's been shown throughout the nation in states that have legalized marijuana. So what does that mean? That means you need more officers to respond to those calls. And as you said, we don't have those. The numbers are down dramatically. Cleveland is, sadly down more than, anybody else in the state number wise. And, they're having folks, leave a lot more rapidly than they're joining.
With the potential for this, now we had spoken to the Coalition to Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol who fronted this here. They believe that they do have the necessary percentage for it to pass here. In the experience you've had, do you feel like that's true? I mean, are the people you're talking to against, for it? Like, where do you feel like the state is standing right now, at least from the FOP's perspective?
I think I've seen the same numbers that they've seen. That's polling. We obviously haven't done any polling on it. It could very well be the case, but who knows? We all know it's a matter of turnout, who comes out to vote, and where are they doing their polling? Are they doing their polling on college campuses, or are they doing it in senior citizen communities? It's one of the other things that to go along with the gateway drug idea, when I think there's a 10% tax on the marijuana sales. 25% of that tax is going toward addiction. that should tell you that they know there's a problem, that you can get addicted to marijuana. If they're dedicating 25% of their tax revenue to addiction, that should show you that they know there's a problem. And again, that problem, that addiction problem, leads to other drugs, harder drugs, heroin, the opioids and such.
Gary, what are you hoping that people know, at least from the position that you all have here, prior to going and voting in November? I feel like a lot of times with issues like this, people just see the headlines but don't actually read into it. So what are you hoping people know and understand before making that decision?
Well, fortunately, we're in a day and age with the internet that you can research these things. You can find these statistics. You can find out what's happened in these states that have legalized marijuana. I was in Nevada a couple of weeks ago. You walk down the street and that's all you smell. A few years ago, I was in Seattle, Washington. That's all you smell. Sadly, here, one of our own state senators last year got some legislation passed that actually increased the amount of marijuana you could have in your system and still be legally drive. Historically, we've always lowered the amount of alcohol in your system because we realize how unsafe it is. But yet we've had folks in Columbus that have decided, let's let folks have more marijuana in their system because it's, I guess they're assuming it's going to be legal. If they didn't think that, they wouldn't mess with it, because if it's illegal, any amount in your system should be illegal. But when you, again, look at a place like Colorado where traffic fatalities have gone up so much, and I think they had something like 74% of the people they tested had marijuana in their system. That's an astounding number. If you're just a normal person like you or I driving down the street, do you want that many people driving high? It just, we know people aren't going to just buy their marijuana, stay home and smoke it. That's not going to happen. We know that. And I think that's what people need to do. They just need to do some research and see what is done in these communities. Legal marijuana isn't a panacea for getting rid of the drug dealers on the street corners. It's not a panacea for increasing the tax revenue in the state. I think another part of that taxation thing is 25% was going to go to job equity. And the way I kind of read job equity, and you can look at it a lot of different ways. Are we going to pay the current guys on the street corners to go away, kind of like we do with the farmers with some of their crops and things, where we pay them not to grow things? We're going to pay the drug dealers to go away. Is that what job equity is for marijuana growers and sellers?
Yeah, a lot of questions here and a lot of unknowns, I think, partially is leading to way more of these questions than answers. Gary answered all my questions here. Is there anything we didn't touch on specifically that we should have?
No, not that I can think of. Like I said, I think that, one of the things that, when we do things like this and it's, comes upon us so quickly, is a lot of folks don't think through to the unintended consequences. And that's the things I mentioned about, the small kids, getting a hold of, edibles, and the older kids getting a hold of, marijuana and starting to smoke marijuana. And, we see in Colorado and Washington, the numbers of those folks under 21 years old using marijuana just increased so much because it's more available. And it's going to be like beer. When we were, 18, 19 years old, we all had that buddy that was 21 and went and bought beer for us. It's not going to be any different with marijuana. And, we're going to start getting folks, younger folks involved in this and addicted to it at a much younger age. And, that just doesn't lead to good things. And, all the studies are out there about the damage it does to your brain and all of that stuff too. And, we've been told that, adolescent brains don't fully develop until they're in their 20s. And now we're going to, give these folks an opportunity to have marijuana, whether they get it because they're under 21 and somebody supplied it to them or they found it. What's that going to do potentially to their brain cells? And, when they get to be a little bit older, in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and further than that even.
So we have a full breakdown of this and also the response from the Coalition to Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol on our website at cleveland19.com. Highly suggest looking at that to get both sides on this story. All right, much more to come, both on air and online. 19 News at 7:30 starting in about 13 minutes.
19 News, now streaming on Samsung Smart TV. Search for channel 1035.